All right. Well, now, Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Tuesday, the 21st. I had to look at my calendar there of July to confirm the date. And looking forward to another show. I did listen to pretty much all of yesterday's program, watched it to edit out, among other reasons, to edit out my coughing. And it wasn't as bad as I feared, but it wasn't great. I'm hopeful that that's mostly behind me, especially because for whatever reason, I couldn't find my cough. I had a whole bag of cough drops, but I don't know where they are now. And I'm kind of annoyed about that, but I'll try hard not to cough and to use my cough. I have a cough button, use the cough button, and I can always go back and edit out the dead spots later. Don't know if we'll do a full hour. Kind of probably depends a little bit on you. If you call in, that will extend the length of the show a little bit. Otherwise, maybe it'll be somewhere in the half hour, 45-minute range. We'll see. Generally, I go at least an hour, but with a cold and other issues, we'll see how things go. I did put on the thumbnail these two politicians I really like. Right now, they are saying all the right things. Abdul el-Sayed, who appears to be the front runner in Michigan for the Democratic nomination for the U.S. Senate, and his opponent, AIPAC darling Haley Stevens, now trailing, at least in the predictions markets and in some recent polls. But I question the validity of the polls that show el-Sayed with a double-digit lead. I'm not confident. I'm never particularly confident, but I'm not confident of those polls. For whatever reason, the people who put money down on these races seem to think el-Sayed is a 3-1 favorite, 3 to 4 to 1, putting down about 80 cents for the opportunity to get back $1. So 80 to win 20 is pretty good odds, right? I think Nate Silver said anything above 70% is no longer a toss-up, right? Nate Silver said if an election is somewhere between 30 and to 70%, if a candidate has somewhere between a 30 and 70% chance to win based on prediction markets, based on his metrics, that's pretty much a toss-up. The science just isn't good enough to believe that somebody who has a 66 2/3 chance to win going in really is a 2/3 favorite. We just don't know enough. But he said, once you get over that 70-75% mark, then you would appear to have an advantage. I'm not sure if that's the case, but the prediction markets have Abdul up over 80%, which is really good. And then this replacement, Troy Jackson, did not come out of nowhere. As far as I'm concerned, I've known about Troy Jackson since last decade when I worked as an organizer for Our Revolution, very well known to the progressive left in that area, a lumberman from a very remote corner of the state. The progressives who have supported him, who have followed him for quite a long time, rallied behind Jackson and managed to push him to the nomination to replace Graham Plattner. And I said, and I'm going to get into detail, I'm going to play some clips from both these guys. I said when Plattner was facing potential challenge to being pushed to withdraw, I don't know if I put this on, probably didn't do this live because on video, because I was in fact, I was in Europe when this all happened, and I talked about that yesterday. But I put on social media, and you can go to the Halitics Facebook page. I'll put the little GIF I put together on screen for you. Yeah, want more? Go to Halitics on Facebook. We're there 24/7. But what I argued was that I was upset. I was disappointed that Plattner was withdrawing and that he had been pushed out, because I had no confidence that his replacement would share his values. But if we are voters who consistently demand that our candidates reflect our views, who are going to do what we want them to do, then the candidate is less critical, right? I mean, as long as you are saying, hey, if I lose candidate A, but I got candidate B, and candidate B pretty much says the same things as candidate A, and I pretty much is as good as candidate A. Maybe they're a little bit different in certain ways, but bottom line, they're on the most important issues similar. Then you don't feel so bad. You know, like, okay, well, because, notwithstanding what people like Brianna Joy Gray have said, I think most of us truly supported Graham Plattner because we liked what he's saying. We thought this is a guy who's saying exactly what we believe, that we shouldn't be in Iran. We shouldn't spend our hard-earned money on killing people in Gaza. That's the wrong use of our taxpayer dollars. And it's not just wrong, it's just evil. And Plattner was pretty darn good on that. I mean, he was really good. And that's why we supported him, and that's why we're disappointed they lost. Now, there was the argument, well, it's the white working class whale. It's the white whale. You got a white man, and he looks strong and tough. So that's the other reason you back him in. Sure, in a state like Maine especially, but yes, Democrats have struggled to get white working class voters. And we certainly, they, and as me, if the white working class or working, there's this argument, was he really working class? His father was a lawyer, whatever. The point is this candidate somebody who will appeal to voters who have generally not been supporting the left? And is he on the left, right? I mean, I don't care if you're working class or a patrician, as long as you vote the way I want you to. But I only want candidates who are going to vote the way I want them to, who are going to vote against funding a war on Iran, who are going to vote against any money in any fashion, any support whatsoever to Israel, who are going to vote against supporting weapon systems to be sold to Israel. So that's where I am. That's the only thing I care about. But I do want, in terms of who I'll vote for, but I will look and hope for candidates who have broad-based appeal. And Graham Plattner would seem to have that in spades, and especially, again, appealing to a demographic that has gone Republican for, in my view, very understandable reasons. But, Plattner, so significant challenges based on a number of credible allegations of sexual assault, now is out of the race. And I had said yesterday, and my initial take was that I didn't want to see him out because I thought he was a strong candidate. He supported what I support, and there was no proof. It wasn't just that there was no proof. It was purely he said, she said. I don't think we should live in a society where people are drummed out of their opportunities based on unsupported, uncorroborated allegations that are denied. All that said, today I feel differently because the replacement, Troy Jackson, certainly appears to be a candidate who shares the positions that Plattner has very, very articulately articulated, and it doesn't have the baggage. So good. This could be great. This could be careful what you wish for, AIPAC. You're going to get somebody who's going to have a better chance to defeat Susan Collins. But let's start in Michigan. This guy, Al-Sayed, I think he's great. I was really worried when I saw a poll by the Detroit, what is it? Is it the Detroit News? There's the Detroit Free Press. I think this was the Detroit News, whatever commission that showed Haley Stevens with a 7-point lead. And that poll still worries me. That came out after a raft. I mean, AIPAC, Al-Sayed says 30 million. That sounds plausible, is spending on Stevens because they're really that concerned with Al-Sayed. They're that afraid he could win. And he's really a threat. He is a threat because you got a voice, more than one voice. You get Bernie has been decent, not perfect, not great, but decent. Al-Sayed is more powerful, a stronger articulant against Israel. He joins Bernie, joins Chris Van Hollen. And then what if you get in Troy Jackson? Democrats really will be pushed to take the right stance on this issue. Doesn't mean they will, but they'll be pushed. Let's play the clip. And by the way, I just want to say, I don't know who this young kid is who got this guy. This is a great get by him. And he has a partner there. I guess they're a Michigan-based group. Really well done. And really good question, too. So much, oh my gosh, they're so much better. It's a low bar. They're so much better than, obviously, the CNN flacks, the Tappers, the Dana Batches. And we'll hear a little bit from Tapper as well later on in an interview with El Sayed where he completely wets the bed. All right, let's go. Here's El Sayed.
Like it does for Haley Stevens?
No.
So the question, let me start from the beginning, but they're making fun of Haley Stevens' statement that Israel comes to her in her dreams.
Does Israel come to you in your dreams like it does for Haley Stevens?
No.
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
But I will tell you this, I am haunted by pictures.
So it was a horrible look for her, right? I mean, it looked really bad. And I'll just talk about that for a minute because she explains it as, I was before, a Jewish group. This was right after October 7th. And, we were all trying to be, I was trying to show my solidarity for the community. And I will say it's a tough situation, right? Because, look, the entire media apparatus, all the institutions in this country are showing complete support for Israel in that moment. Obviously, people who were innocent, they weren't, in the moment committing any crimes against Palestinian civilians, non-combatants, just whatever, normal, everyday people were killed. And it's horrible, and I understand why Norm Finkelstein won't condemn Hamas for that. And I have trouble too condemning Hamas for that because they are clearly representing an oppressed, persecuted population that is has no options, really, no options. Land being stolen, just day after day. Their people being killed, being tortured, being raped. That's just the reality of life for Palestinians as it's been for decades and decades. So I have sympathy, but still, you're in a situation where you have dead bodies. You have a concert littered with corpses of children or very young people. It's a very horrible situation all around. And you can't go to a group of a synagogue and say, well, look, the chickens have come home to roost. I'm sorry to say that. You can't say that. So some sympathy for where Haley Stevens was. Now, very little sympathy because this is somebody who takes many millions from AIPAC and has been, virtually inseparable from Israel, from AIPAC on every vote. So I have very little sympathy for her, but in this one instance, I kind of sort of get where she was coming from.
I'll tell you this, I am haunted by pictures of what our taxpayer dollars paid for.
Yeah.
And I think for too long, we watched a lot of those things. And I'm never going to forget seeing a video of a little girl who was about my elder daughter's age fanning another little girl who's about my younger daughter's age because both of their parents had been killed by bombs that our taxpayer dollars paid for. And I cannot help but contrast that with kids that I got to serve here in Wayne County in the city of Detroit, trying to learn how to read in schools where they have to wear their coats because the boiler broke 2 weeks ago and there wasn't money to fix that.
So this is such a powerful narrative by Dr. El Sayed here, where he's saying, I've seen these Palestinian children being killed or consoling each other because their parents were killed. And he can't get that out of his mind. And he can't separate the murders by Israel with American money, millions, billions of dollars. He can't separate that from the needy children in Detroit whose schools don't have enough funding to have heating systems that work. That's just, it's inarguable. That's just fact. When you think of it that way, obviously this guy should be the winner. He should be the next senator from Michigan. And this is how most people would see it without question. And that's why, AIPAC has to spend whatever, 30 million. I'm going to get that sticker up that they put up, their little thumbnail, to see what it is. But it's an inordinate amount of money. Of course. And that's why they're, the media's all in, doing everything it possibly can to bolster her and to tear him down. But when you just watch him, when you listen to a guy who, has been, supporting Medicare for all for a decade and apparently helped write the legislation, it's just an absolute no-brainer. He should be the Democratic nominee, and he would likely win. All right, here we go.
So those kids, those are the kids I spend most of my time thinking about. And the idea that our tax dollars have been used to orphan those children rather than pay for good schools for those children, that should piss all of us off. And Absolutely. It pisses me off tremendously.
And by the way, it would and does piss everyone off who's aware of it, or virtually everyone. That's why the media spends such extraordinary pains to avoid discussing Israel's crimes, to distract us, to focus on irrelevancies or de minimis issues. That's where we are. And it's heartbreaking, really, when you think about it. All right, let's just put this little clip up here. So that's El Sayed, who's haunted by the image of the children who orphaned by Israel with our tax dollars, with bombs that were paid for with our tax dollars. And here's who he's going up against. So there's Ms. Stevens, the congresswoman, who now, according to Track AIPAC, and I have no reason to doubt those numbers, is north of 25 million. North of 25 million. So again, there's just no question. You have to support El Sayed, and I think he'll win. Now, the question is, he too good to be true? There was a sense, I think, in 2024, I was a supporter of John Fetterman. I wouldn't say, or 22. I wouldn't say I was over. Yeah, I mean, I certainly wanted him over Dr. Oz. And I think his background, he seemed like somebody who had appeal to a relatively wide group. So yeah, we hoped Fetterman, but I would never say Fetterman in that moment seemed too good to be true. But El Sayed kind of does, right? I mean, he's so articulate. He's a doctor. He's correct on the issues, and that is just so rare in American politics. So, do you think El Sayed, if you're watching live, call in right now, 240-242-5646. Can an Abdul El Sayed win? Do we live in a country where the elections are free enough, fair enough, unrigged enough that somebody who's just so clearly superior to the run-of-the-mill Democrat or Republican, do they have a shot when you have a Haley Stevens there, who is so, and I mean, look, again, the stars were in alignment for Zoran Mamdani, right? He wouldn't, very unlikely, have won if the Democratic frontrunner had not been the, disgraced former governor. And if the mayor wasn't the disgraced mayor. That's how he was able to win. Now, he is very popular. His policies are being implemented, and he's, a great candidate. He was, but it took all of that for him to win. Now, the stars are kind of in alignment now for Abdul El Sayed. Haley's a remarkably poor candidate. Michelle Goldberg talked about that. Michelle Goldberg for the New York Times, not a particularly appealing pundit, in my opinion, not a particularly intellectual pundit, not somebody who provides any real insight, but she made the argument that even though Haley Stevens is closer to the center, to that mythical center, She's more moderate. And, you know, she, whatever, you know, is she? Is somebody who takes $25 million, who votes with Israel on everything? Are they more moderate? But at least from the New York Times perspective, she's more moderate. And Goldberg's point is, well, more moderate candidates usually win. They're stronger in general elections, more moderate Democrats against Republicans than left-wingers. The evidence for that, very weak, maybe there's some evidence to support it. It just depends on the candidate. It's also, if a candidate is very associated with social issues, right? Social justice, cultural issues, identity politics, that doesn't go over so well. But what does go over well? Redistribution, peace. Trump was the peace candidate in the Republican primary in 2016. That's how he won. Trump said everyone should have health care in 2016. That's how he won that primary. He was to the left of Hillary on important issues, trade for sure. So the idea that you want to be a moderate has some value if you're talking about not being too out and proud on some cultural issues. It's not legit, except from the standpoint of raising money from billionaires. It's not legit that more moderate candidates on economic issues are more likely to prevail. But Michelle Goldberg says, well, yes, on issues, Stevens is better. She's more electable. But she's not a good candidate. She's not likable. She's not quick on her feet. You could see from that the way she said, Israel comes to me in my dreams. She, says things that don't ultimately age well. So Goldberg's willing to entertain the notion that al-Sayed, despite being too far to the left, might be the stronger candidate. No question, he is the better candidate. Even she couldn't quite deny it. Against the $25 million woman, do we have free enough, fair enough America that Abdul al-Sayed can win? I'd really want your opinion on that. 240-242-5646. And see, there was a call here, but wow, somebody did call me and I didn't apparently hear it. I am sorry. Try again if you can from the 831, because I'd love to talk to you. Do we live in a world right now? In fact, I think that is, it was Arlen who was calling. Let me see if I can get Arlen back. Arlen, by the way, didn't do Arlen today. We'll see if we can get him on the line here and have a little convo with him. By the way, usually it's an Arlen Tuesday. Arlen is going away in a week, and he just didn't have the time to put in for a full program.
That is, it was Arlen who was calling. Let me see if I can get Arlen back.
Hey, Arlen, I can hear myself on your phone. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to hear you, Hal.
Thank you, sir. I was very glad to see somebody tried to reach me to discuss this. I think it was you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I was playing around with the phone because I had the wrong phone number in my contacts and then trying to get...
It's very confusing because it's not like the phone number is right plastered on the screen at all times in my little oval, but I get it.
I'm not used to calling Halitics, I'm usually being there as a guest, but...
Guest host. Co-host, regular co-host Tuesdays, Arlen. And Arlen... I should have mentioned this to start the program, but I was so interested in getting right to the meat of it that I didn't. But of course, Arlen is our regular Tuesday co-host, and he's off today except to call in, which we greatly appreciate. He'll be off next week as he's traversing our nation eastward this time. But once he's back in Vermont and settled, he will resume his co-hosting responsibilities Tuesdays, which we are always grateful for. Thank you, Arlen. And as always, even when you call and I talk over you, now the mic is yours.
I've said, just as I did last year, probably the year before, I will be in Vermont talking with you on a regular basis, I hope. And, I have to check the clock and make sure I'm in the right time zone and everything, but I'll try to do that and get, coordinate with you ahead of time. Are we on the air live now?
We're live. Hey, I was asking whether I don't know what you caught or heard, but it sounded like you were listening to me because I heard me when I got you. So the question I had was, do you think our society is fair enough, free enough to elect a Dr. Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan, somebody who's overtly pro-Palestine, has made it very clear he opposes any support, financial support to Israel?
Yeah, I think it's possible, but the right now I think the elections are so up in the air just because Trump is going crazy trying to find a way to discourage people to have an election, and he's probably trying to block having our midterm election. It's kind of scary to me because he's got a lot of power and there's nobody around to stop him. So
it's very scary. Your point is more than well taken. I was really referring to the Democratic primaries, which are in less than 2 weeks from today in Michigan, August 4th. So it was really a Democrat against a Democrat moment. But I share your concern for sure, Arlen.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great candidates out there. We know that, and some of them, are winning. And I think we've got some good chances to pick up, both the Senate and the House. But if the Republicans are, figuring out a way to, not either discourage people from voting or not counting votes, trying to. The big thing they're talking about now is if you could get people to not believe that the elections are honest, then that's a good place to be, for you to keep, for Trump to keep going. And, all these things. And then there's, of course, the problem with money. You got Elon Musk with $1 trillion or somewhere in that ballpark, and so many others that are just allowed to spend whatever money they want. So even though the Democrats have the poll numbers, do they have, the support, the money, and everything else to, get their candidate elected? So, but I think
they do have the money in Michigan in the form of Haley Stevens, the pro-Israel congresswoman who has received $25 million, according to Track AIPAC, from AIPAC to defeat Dr. El-Sayed in the primary. So, yes, if Democrats are willing to adopt pro-Republican policies, or let's say corporate or pro-war policies, then they can get the money. But is that a price worth paying, right? I mean, is it worth voting for a pro-war Democrat if a pro-genocide Democrat on the theory that, well, at least they can defeat the Republican because they'll get lots of money? Is it worth it? I mean, I would say no, but I'm sure there's an argument that we have to defeat the greater of evils.
Well, I posted something on my Big Picture, the BigPictureReport.com website about the fact that, it looks like the Democrats have a lot of money. There's people, willing to support them, and they've given them a lot of money, more money, and Democrats have more money than Republicans. But, those things don't mean a whole lot when there is no restrictions or laws that say, well, Republican billionaires can't just put money in there whenever they want to, and whenever it's needed, then a lot of that stuff has no real meaning. They may have more money now, but when it comes time for the election, will they have more money then? And that's very questionable.
I think the PAC money is very, very scary. The money from Israel, the money from crypto, really has had tremendous influence on election results. Very, very frightening. So all we can do is organize and hope for the best, I guess, and vote.
Yeah, that, may not be enough. I don't know, but, there's so many obstacles, in our way that, And like I say, that this is the only way I think the Democrats are going to get any power, because right now they have no power. They're not in control of anything. And therefore, Trump does whatever he wants to do and often gets away with it. Not always. Some of the judges are, saying that, no, you can't do this or you can't do that. But, for Trump to give up his office is hard to imagine. And he gets crazier and crazier every day. And, now all the Democrats that are running are supposed to be like godless communists, are the words that, he used.
If only, Arlen. Actually, no, we don't want communists, but socialists, yes. Democratic socialists, yes. Communists, no. Arlen, anything further you wanted to add? I really wanted your take on if you believe we can, through politics, bring our country back. And sounds like your concerns are first and foremost Trump preventing us from having free and fair elections. Do you think, though, that we can see free and fair elections? I mean, in our lifetime, we've moved away from any president who's truly put working people first, poor people first. And I think, probably you remember, I believe, LBJ. I do not. But it's hard for me to look back at our presidents and see anyone who really was centered the needs of the poor and the working class since LBJ. I think Jimmy Carter had a good heart, but I think he was constrained to a great degree, and his policies did not reflect kind of a worldview. So I don't know that we can that our system is capable of true wealth and power redistribution. I mean, do you?
I have my doubts because the way things are going. We've long lost our chance to call ourselves a democracy when we're when the Electoral College tells us who is the winner, even if one candidate has more votes than the one they decide is the winner. That's happened 5 times, as you know. And so, there's just so many obstacles now to real democracy. And of course, we're getting for the first time the Supreme Court, making sure that, that corporations can be people and they can give as much money as they want. And so it's going to be a tough one. I do want to say one thing that I'm really upset with Bill Maher. Now, I understand from the last couple of days he's been saying he's really afraid of the kind of candidates the Democrats are running. In other words, progressive socialists, democratic socialists. And, he's worried about that. And he was asked, would you vote for J.D. Vance? And he said, maybe. So, in other words, I think Bill Maher's gone to the other side for some strange reason. He's always been, overly pro-Israel, but, he just seems to get more and more conservative as he gets older. And I think he's around 70 now. So anyway, I've lost all respect for Bill Maher.
Well, I understand, Arlen. I don't know if this is true. I've never been a fan of his. I never found him to be particularly amusing. I find him to be smarmy and arrogant. But I understand that he did endorse. Is this true? Because I never found the clip, and I honestly haven't spent a lot of time doing it. I heard that he supported Bernie in 2016. Is that true? Is that as far as you know?
I don't remember that. I mean, he gave the Democratic Party a lot of money, $1 million in a couple of different campaigns, but I don't remember him being, a Bernie supporter. I think I would guess that he would have been for Hillary, but, I'm not 100% sure.
Well, here's Variety. 2015. Apparently, he did. I mean, didn't take me a lot of trouble. For all my saying, I don't know whether he did or not. It just took a real quick Google search. Variety, watch Bill Maher. This is actually, I said 2015. 2015, but it's February 2016 where he, with an F yeah, says, I do support Bernie. Not a Hillary Clinton supporter at all, which, I don't know whether I would have thought he'd support her or not. He certainly would on Israel. It's kind of, he's changed. I think one of the arguments that we've heard on that, Arlen, is he took a lot of money from Israel. He's taken a lot of cash. He's gotten a lot of funding from AIPAC or AIPAC affiliated groups, and that has, corrupted him.
He's very overly, pro-Israel, much more than the average progressive, I think, and so that scares me. But I'll tell you, the one reason I knew that he was changing was earlier in the year when he called Mamdani a communist. He did it more than once. So that tells me that his views are a little bit distorted, and maybe by Israel or I just don't know exactly why. Except maybe he's aging and changed his mind on a few things. But anyway, like I say, I've lost all respect for him. I've always respected him somewhat, but none at all now.
All right. Well, I appreciate the call, Arlen. I guess that was your final word, unless you have something else. I want to just note your blog, as you mentioned, is thebigpicturereport.com. And Arlen mentioned that he posted from the New York Times, who really has the 2026 midterms cash edge. And it is an eye-opener, Arlen. You're showing a number of races where there's much more money in the coffers of the Democrat, and surprisingly in Texas, Talrico, according to this article, who knows how accurate, I guess it's reported fundraising, Talrico with 15 times as much money almost as Ken Paxton, John Ossoff 10 times as much in Georgia over his opponent, Sherrod Brown 3.5 times as much in Ohio. Alaska Peltola, she has a good shot at winning. I think Ossoff probably will win in Georgia. Maybe Sherrod Brown could take his seat back in Ohio. North Carolina, you have Roy Cooper with the favorite there, 3-1 edge, and this still has Graham Plattner as the Dem nominee, but he's been replaced. He'll be replaced by Troy Jackson, and I think, Arlen, you should be happy about that, because Troy Jackson appears to be a very strong candidate whose positions are consistent with those of Mainers.
There are good candidates out there, I'll say that. But yeah, that particular article you're referring to in my blog, you read the headline, you read the beginning of it, and you think, oh wow, the Democrats are so much better off, financially. But then you get into the article and you see that it's really meaningless at this point, because the Supreme Court tells us that the rich people can put in money whenever they want and not even have to disclose it often. That's the most important thing to learn from that particular article.
Yeah, it's very frightening. It really is. I just put up the relevant square there from it. Let me just see if I can get a little more in. But you can see in most of the races, Dems with an advantage. Some of them it's a little bit premature. For example, Michigan hasn't had its primary yet. We'll see what happens after that primary. And again, Plattner is being replaced formally this week by Troy Jackson. All right, Arlen, let me let you go. You have a great trip back east, and thanks for checking in. I really look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, I believe, on the 4th. That'll be Michigan primary day, by the way.
Good to see you. Good. And in a few weeks, we'll get together for a whole hour, I hope.
All right, thanks. That sounds great, Arlen. Really looking forward to it. It's always good to take calls. Really appreciate Arlen checking in. Hope you will do so as well. 240-242-5646 is the phone number here. Back to the conversation about Michigan. Let's see, where do we want to go with this? The polling, right? So can El Sayed, that's a question, do we have enough freedom in our elections to elect to nominate an al-Sayed and then elect him. And, I think you look at 2016 and you say, this is a guy, Bernie Sanders, that was clearly, without any real argument, the stronger candidate against Trump. And it didn't matter to Cory Booker. It didn't matter to, who's the Ms. Magazine founder? She dated Henry Kissinger. I remember she was out there hitting the stump for Hillary. It didn't matter for the Cesar Chavez's left-hand woman. They were all out there doing everything possible to get Hillary the nomination, and she did, even though the better candidate, the stronger candidate, the pro-worker candidate was Bernie Sanders. So you had to look at that race. Times endorsed Hillary, of course. New media did everything possible to undermine him. So you look at that race, and you have to say, well, we don't really have democracy. When I looked at these polling numbers, I got very, very nervous. And by the way, I'll get you the names of those people. Gloria Steinem, the founder of Ms. Magazine, out there on the stump, claiming that young women were only supporting Bernie. She was a staunch Hillary supporter, multi-million, at that point, worth $5-6 million, claiming that the young women only supported Bernie because that's what their boyfriends wanted. So there's your feminists right there. The poet laureate, I know why the caged bird sings, Maya Angelou, also worth several million, supporting Hillary. So even though you had a pro-worker candidate in Bernie, a pro-poor people candidate in Bernie, a candidate who was more electable in Bernie, he still was defeated by elites. And the result was Donald Trump became president. We now have in Michigan a candidate in al-Sayed who's clearly more electable, more appealing. Even Michelle Goldberg admits in the New York Times. But this poll comes out by the Detroit News a week or so ago, a little more than that, with her with a 7-point lead. And this was the first poll that had her with any kind of a real lead in the race for months and months and months. And to me, that poll was reflective of all the money, the $25 million that AIPAC was pouring into the race was money well spent. They had finally they had convinced enough Michigan voters that al-Sayed was racist, that he was sexist, that he didn't care about Michigan voters, that his stated concern for Palestinians really masked a lack of concern for people from Michigan. Of course, it's just the opposite. He's saying, let's not spend that money. I'm concerned about all that money we're pouring into a genocide when we should be spending it on people here. And yet the money from AIPAC convincing many Michigan voters that red is blue and black is white. Very, very frightening. And, I lost what little faith I had. By the way, just so you know, this is Halitics. You should subscribe if you haven't yet done so. I got a really, really lovely comment from, I believe, a Brit on yesterday's program, just saying how I did a really good job talking about socialism in Europe. He really, I think it was a he, they really appreciated it. I'll say it that way. I assume they are a subscriber. I don't know that. If you're watching, if you're listening, if you're enjoying what I do here, please do subscribe. All right, so the polling not looking great for al-Sayed, the strong candidate, the better candidate, but a couple polls came out just in the past few days, and they paint a very, very different picture than that Detroit News poll. So let me put them up. Look, nothing's more important to me. I know you hear people say that electoralism won't save us. Electoral politics can't save us. We have to be out in the streets. And I agree with that. But being in the streets doesn't help if you have politicians who support using rubber hoses and dogs and bullets against protesters. So here's Tolchin Research and Data for Progress, both giving Abdul al-Sayed a double-digit lead. Data for Progress, known as a Democratic sponsor, 13 points. Tolchin Research, 16 for al-Sayed. Oh, it's all over. Look at that. It's much better than anything Stevens can point to. No, not nearly so fast. Tulgin Research is actually an El Sayed pollster. They actually are working for El Sayed. Silver says if you have a pollster who works for you, you have to discount the poll results by 4 points. I don't agree with that. I think you disregard it completely. I don't think there's any value or virtually no value to that Tulchin Research poll. I give some credit to the Data for Progress poll. So maybe it's even, maybe El Sayed with a slight lead, but there's no reason to get our hopes up to be too optimistic. It's really, really, really a dead heat. Or my fear is that the most reliable poll, that Glenn Gariff poll from Detroit News for the Detroit News, really does accurately reflect a race that the AIPAC money has turned in favor of the less desirable, less electable, the worst candidate. And there's very, in my view, reason to believe that. There's good reason. So it's very, very frightening. Now, one more data point that I actually do think provides an optimistic picture of what's happening in Michigan, and that is the predictions markets. And they both show El Sayed, and I mentioned this in the opening of the program, they both show El Sayed with over an 80% chance to win. So that's really, really good. Look at that. El Sayed 82, Stevens 19%, Kalshi, Polymarket has him at 83%. Let's see if we can get that up for you. So there you go, 83-17 for El Sayed and Polymarket. Now, you can see, at least from the Kalshi poll, let me put that back up, that the green and blue lines started to come together recently. It's at the far right bottom of your screen there. That was after the Detroit News poll came out. I think bettors looked at that and thought, not so good. Maybe she's going to win. Now, she never took the lead back as she had it months ago. I think bettors are overstating El Sayed. I really do. I think he's a favorite now, and he shouldn't be such a big favorite. That said, we have seen in Denver, right, in Colorado, Milat Quiros won there. It was a great win. She beat Diane DeJet, an incumbent. That was a great win, Democratic Socialist. Obviously, in New York, we saw some great wins. We've seen some good wins in New Jersey. I would be over the moon if El Sayed wins. I think it would be tremendous. It would be just as bad if Haley Stevens manages to take that race. So we'll follow it. But this is a real test of our democracy. And for those who say, well, as long as the voters' will is reflected, then that's all that matters. No, it's not. If you say the only thing that reflects the will of the voters is the count. Because yes, that is what we have to go by, of course. But if voters are overwhelmed by dishonest ads, by claims such as from Stevens that Obama endorsed her, which he has not done, over claims that El Sayed is sexist, which he is most certainly not, or certainly there's no evidence of that, then that's not democracy. Democracy is where the media holds candidates accountable for lies, treats them both reasonably equally, asks them fair and tough questions, both. That's democracy. That's not what we're seeing, not even close, in this Michigan race. And I'll just end with the evidence of that, with this clip here with Brianna Keeler interviewing El Sayed in a pretty nasty way. Let's play the clip.
Do you believe Israel has a right to exist?
So, I mean, that's just like the world's dumbest question. What's the point of that question except to say, well, either you're like going to offend those of us who are totally outraged by Israel's behavior, or you're going to turn off, maybe however many Zionists are in the district and who will say they won't vote for you. I mean, that's the only question. It doesn't get you anywhere. Do you believe Israel has a right to exist? And he handles it extremely well. But, however you respond, you lose. Because if you don't say yes or no, then the response is then the attack on you will be, oh, doesn't answer the question. It's a word salad. But the problem is the question itself is bogus. And I don't know, I don't know what you do, except hopefully people see through it and they get more and more angry at the dishonest smear merchant who's asking it.
So, Casey, AIPAC's become a big issue in this election because AIPAC's already spent $30 million in this election. They're by far the biggest spender in the race. Now, the question about a right to exist, it's interesting because nobody's ever asked me whether or not I believe Palestine has a right to exist. Every single president who served has said that they believe in a two-state solution. Israel exists. The question is whether or not we want a politics where our money is sent over to Israel to do.
So it's a great answer. I mean, it's as good as you can give. I mean, do you believe Israel has a right to exist? I actually like a little better when Mamdani says they have a right to exist as a democracy. But nations have legitimacy if the people who live in their borders have equal say over their governance and if they're treated equally and fairly by their government. And that is not what Israel does. So as the state is currently constituted, I would say, no, they do not have a legitimate right to exist as currently constituted. I think you could go there. I think you could go to that place at this point.
Instead of investing in our own kids.
You say it exists, but does it have a...
So look at it. I mean, it's just so... And right, like what... I can't... It's such a horrible... She completely disregards what he says. She couldn't care less. This is such a gotcha interview. And you start to say, well, should you just not even go on media? But why show this? And New York Times doing the exact same thing. Lulu Navarro Garcia, I have the clip. I'm not going to play it today, maybe for tomorrow. And then we have a really great guest Thursday, Taylor McCollum Frazier, where she's going to talk to us about her fight, her successful fight against data centers. Really looking forward to that. But this is just embarrassing us. And this is how I say we don't have a democracy. This is not an independent media. This is a media that's kowtowing to Trump. This is a media that kowtowing to Zionists. This is a media that is not pursuing the truth in any kind of fearless or incorruptible way.
No, I didn't say that. I just said the question of Israel's existence is not a question. I'm not going to play this gotcha game about whether or not it has a right to exist. The question ultimately is about whether or not we want a politics that dignifies.
You're not going to play the gotcha game, but you're not going to say you think Israel has a...
Isn't just awful, embarrassing who she is? And is that why you went into journalism? That, by the way, is not Breonna Keeler. I said that's Casey. I forget her last name, but it's just horrible. It's just, this is what we're dealing with. And you can't have a democracy if that's who your media is.
Israelis and Palestinians. And to me, the folks who should answer what the ultimate peace there looks like should be Jewish Israelis and Palestinians. I want my tax dollars spent here in Michigan to provide schools in Michigan, to build healthcare in Michigan, to invest in Michigan, rather than to be sent abroad to kill Palestinian people, do genocides and apartheid. The question about whether or not Israel has a right to exist is actually quite secondary to whether or not they have a right to our tax dollars. And people don't ask that question in good faith. So if you want to ask me about Palestinian right to exist, if you want to ask me about what I want to do for kids in Michigan, I'm happy to answer that question. But the AIPAC and Israel have become secondary questions that too many people have to talk about because our tax dollars keep getting spent over there rather than being spent over here.
Just a terrible, terrible job by CNN in reflecting that we don't have democracy. At least not a vibrant one, not a watchdog, not a media watchdog that's actually looking out for us. It's just really, really awful. By the way, Dolores Huerta, I mentioned her before. She was the labor hero from the 60s and 70s who also backed Hillary to the hilt, even though the pro-labor candidate in 2016 was Bernie Sanders. All right, that's going to do it for today's Halitics. I will be back, I hope, tomorrow. I'm feeling a little better, so we should be able to do it. Have a great afternoon. Thanks so much for being part of Halitics.